Let me tell you a real life story about a Supreme Court case, Hillman versus Maretta in 2013. Warren Hillman was a federal employee who got married to a woman named Judy Maretta in 1989, and Warren designated Judy as the beneficiary in his federal life insurance policy in 1996. 2 years later, in 1998, they got divorced. Then, in 2002, Warren remarried a woman named Jacqueline. 6 years later, Warren unfortunately passed away from leukemia in 2008, and that federal life insurance policy, worth over $124,000, still had his ex wife, Judy, listed as the beneficiary. He never changed it, never updated it after the divorce, never updated it after he remarried. So, what happened? His widow, Jacqueline, and his ex wife, Judy, fought over that money for 5 years. 5 years of legal battles and heartaches. And the US Supreme Court ultimately decided that Judy, the ex wife he had been divorced from for 10 years, was entitled to every single penny because the federal insurance programs preempt state laws. And Jacqueline, the woman who was actually his wife when he died, got nothing from that federal life insurance policy. As a divorced and now remarried guy myself, I can't imagine putting my family through a legal battle because I simply forgot to update my beneficiary. And when I die, I'm not going to feel anything, but my family certainly would feel pain from the consequences of my inaction. This is my legacy. And I'm only going to be leaving behind pain if I fail to update my beneficiary or my will. And if there's one thing that will certainly happen to you and everyone else, it is death. And you can have the best investment strategy, the strongest C fund performance in history, and an airtight retirement plan, but none of it matters if you don't prepare for what happens after you're gone. So, with that said, let me show you what happens to your TSP when you die and the mistakes you absolutely must avoid while you're still alive. Because the only thing worse than dying is dying and leaving your family a giant mess. So let me start with the basics. When you die, the money in your TSP does not just vanish into thin air. It goes to someone, and that someone is determined by your beneficiary designation. Now, you might be thinking, well, I've got a will, so I'm all set. Wrong. The TSP is a federal benefit and it only follows your official TSP beneficiary designation on file, or if there isn't one, the standard order of precedence for federal benefits. Now, let's say you never designated a beneficiary, or the person you designated died before you did. What happens then? Well, the TSP has a standard order of precedence that they are legally required to follow. First, it goes to your surviving spouse. And if you do not have a spouse, it goes to your children in equal shares. And that's biological or adopted children only. Stepchildren do not count unless you formally adopt them. If you don't have any children, it goes to your parents. If your parents are gone, it goes to the administrator of your estate. And if you don't have that, it goes to your next of kin based on your state's laws. Now, if you're remarried and you've got kids from a previous marriage, and if you have not designated your beneficiaries and the order of precedence kicks in, your current spouse gets everything. Your kids from your first marriage, they get nothing. If that's not what you want, you better have that beneficiary designation online form filled out immediately. Now, let's talk about the biggest distinction in your TSP death benefit, whether your beneficiary is a spouse or a non spouse. This is not just about who gets the cash. It's about how much of the cash they get to keep and when they have to take it. The tax rules here are vastly different, thanks in large part of the Secure Act, and it can be a financial game changer for your loved ones. So if your spouse is the beneficiary, they have a few flexible options. First, take ownership, and they can choose to have the TSP create a beneficiary participant account or BPA in their own name. And this account is still protected by federal law, and they basically become the new owner, and they can keep letting the money grow and they can make investment choices, but they will have to create a new login. Next, roll the funds into their own TSP account, whether they are a current federal employee or retired federal employee. And the other option is to roll it into their own IRA. And the advantage of rolling it into their own IRA is that it gives them the most control and flexibility for passing it on to their own beneficiaries later. Another option is to just cash it out, but remember that depending on how the TSP is structured, a large withdrawal could result in a significant tax bill for that year. So be sure to talk with a professional before making any big decisions. Now, if your beneficiary is a non spouse, this means your children, siblings, friends, etc., and their options are much more limited than they are under a tight deadline. And the main takeaway here is that almost all non spouse beneficiaries must totally deplete the inherited TSP account within 10 years following the year of your death. So they cannot stretch the payments out over their lifetime like the spouses can. And imagine your kid inherits $1 million from your TSP. They now have to figure out how to take that money out in a decade, potentially pushing them into a higher tax bracket every single year if they already have a job. And as for tax implications for both spouses and non spouses, when they take a withdrawal from a traditional TSP, that money is taxed as ordinary income in the year it's withdrawn. The difference is the timing. Your spouse can defer those taxes for decades, but someone like your child has 10 years to take the money out and pay taxes on the withdrawal. So be careful who you designate for the retirement account. Now, to make matters even more complicated, if the participant died on or after the required minimum distributions beginning date, which is age 73 for now and then 75 later on, the non spouse beneficiary might also have to take RMDs or required minimum distributions each year during those 10 years. And I know this process can be challenging to understand, so be sure to consult with an estate attorney or your local CPA to determine the best course of action. Even if you need to wait a few months to make some of these tough financial decisions, just remember this video is intended to raise awareness, and your situation is unlikely to be the same as someone else's in the comment section. And if you're the beneficiary watching this video, I am sorry that you're going through this, but you also don't want to make any major financial decisions without being properly informed while you're grieving the loss of your loved one. And so please talk to a professional in your area. Now, let me tell you about the biggest mistakes people make before they die and how you can avoid them now. And mistake number one is not doing enough preparation. So first, get your deeds, titles, certificates, bank info, life insurance policy, and contact numbers for your lawyer and broker all in one safe, accessible place. Don't make your spouse hunt for your life's paperwork if something were to happen to you. And mistake number two is not having a will. Did you know that only 32% of American adults have a will? And 68% of Americans are just winging it, hoping everything just works out when they die. And the thing is, you will need it even if you don't think you're rich enough to need one. And I did my first will in the military when I was 19, right before I was shipped to Iraq in 2006 and 2007. I didn't know much, right? I had my storage unit, but I wrote down what I wanted my mom to do if something were to happen to me, and was to just ease her burden without having to guess what I wanted her to do. And here's why you need a will. A will does more than just say who gets your stuff. It lets you name a guardian for your minor children, and it lets you name an executor who is going to handle your estate. It gives you a say in what happens to your personal belongings, your house, your car, everything that's not covered by a beneficiary designation. How do you want your assets to be distributed? Who's going to become the guardian for any minor children? And who's going to take care of your pets? Do you want your money to be donated to a charity that you believe in? And if you die without a will, the state is going to decide all of that for you based on intestacy laws. And if you're not married or have any kids, you need to write down what you want the person you trust the most to do on your behalf after you pass away. And getting a will is not hard. You can use a service like LegalZoom if you want to keep it simple and affordable, which I'm not sponsored by whatsoever. Or you can hire an estate attorney to create a living trust if your situation is much more complicated. A living trust can help your family avoid probate, which can take months or even years and cost up to 10% of your estate. And with a living trust, your assets can go to your beneficiaries much faster and with a lot more privacy. And it can also help you if you're a parent with minors, or if you're a single parent, and if you want to be more specific about the beneficiary payments, like you don't want to give them a large sum of money until they accomplish a few life events like completing college or providing proof that they have a stable job. And if you're married, what you want to think about is what happens to your assets and your minor children if you and your spouse both pass away at the same time, kind of a worst case scenario, right? And I know it's not something you want to think about, but it's necessary for your planning purposes, especially if you have children under the age of 18. Who's going to take care of your kids and who's going to take care of your assets on both of your behalves? Who's going to fund your children's college if you both pass away? And if you want to avoid having a judge make decisions on your behalf, you should consider getting a living trust. And mistake number 3 is not having a living will. And this is a healthcare document, and it tells doctors what kind of life support or medical care you want if you cannot speak for yourself, regardless of your age. What do you want your family to do if you become incapacitated? Do you want to donate your organs? And as for your final arrangements, do you have a preference for cremation or burial? Pick a funeral home, write it down. Prepaying or having a designated pay on death account for this is a huge help for your family. And mistake number 4 is not updating your beneficiaries for every asset you own. And at least once a year, you should verify the beneficiaries for your TSP, Roth IRA brokerage account, checking account, savings account, CDs, and life insurance policy. And set a reminder on your phone to do this at least once a year. And next, make copies and store your documents. Keep the originals in a safe, a fireproof safe, or a safe deposit box. Doesn't matter. And make sure your spouse or executor has access, including keys and passcodes. You need to revisit your plan when you have a big life change, whether it's a divorce, a new grandchild, a new house, or moving to another state. And mistake number 5 is not openly communicating with your loved ones about what to do when you pass away. Tell your family what your wishes are, no matter what your age is. Open communication prevents guessing games and potential conflict. And I know this sounds weird for some of you, but I have this uncomfortable but much necessary conversation with my family around the holiday timeframe. And if I die tomorrow, my wife knows exactly what to do with our bills, my retirement accounts, and how I want to be buried. If my wife and I died at the same time tomorrow, people in my estate know exactly what they need to do on our behalf. It won't be easy, but the process is all written down. And have that conversation with your family today about what you want if you pass away unexpectedly. And mistake number 6 is not having enough life insurance. And if you're a federal employee, you have FEGLI, that's your federal employee group life insurance. That's the one that I talked about at the beginning of this video. And if you're actively serving in the military, like I did, you're going to have the service members group life insurance, or SGLI, for up to $500,000. But here's the thing, for a lot of you, that's not going to be enough. And if you've got a family, if you've got a mortgage, if you've got kids who are going to college, you need to seriously consider getting a term life insurance policy on top of what you get through work. And as I said, I am not sponsored by anyone. I'm just saying this because this is common sense. Here's a rule of thumb that I always tell my clients. You want to have at least 10 to 15 times your current salary in life insurance coverage. So if you're making $100,000 a year, you should have somewhere between $1 million and $1.5 million in coverage. So think about it. If you die tomorrow, your family is going to lose your income. They're going to lose your federal benefits, and they're going to have to figure out how to pay the mortgage, put food on the table, and send the kids to school. Can your life insurance policy pay off the mortgage or temporarily pay for your family's living expenses without your income? So the smart move here is to opt for a 20 or 30-year term life insurance policy rather than a whole life policy. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of whole life policy because the idea is that by year 20 or 30, you will have built up enough assets through your TSP and other investments that you will not need life insurance anymore, and you will be self-insured at that point. Term life insurance is cheap when you are younger and healthier, right? Get it now while you can still qualify and while the premiums are affordable. So let me wrap up this very sensitive video with a simple action plan. Number 1, log into your TSP account today and check your beneficiary designation. Make sure it's up to date. If it's not, update it. Number 2, if you're divorced, make absolutely certain you have removed your ex-spouse as a beneficiary, unless you specifically want them to inherit your TSP or something like that. And number 3, review your life insurance coverage. If you do not have enough, get a term life insurance policy, right? And number 4, get a will if you don't have one, and get a living trust if it makes sense for your situation. Get an advance directive and powers of attorney. And number 5, have a conversation with your family. Tell them where your important documents are. Tell them who your beneficiaries are. Tell them what you want. The reality is you're going to die. And that's not pessimism. That's just a fact. But you get to decide whether your death is going to be a financial disaster for your family or whether you're going to leave them in good shape. That choice is entirely up to you. And it depends on the actions you take right now. Don't wait, don't procrastinate, don't assume it'll all work out. Take control of your legacy and make sure the people you love are taken care of. And this has been another piece of video. We got a lot out of it.